Hello and welcome to another free code session. My name is Jason Bach and I'm getting paranoid about saying free. I keep wanting to say three. I did that a couple of videos ago. So free, say it right. And in this video, one of the first things I'm doing is I'm trying to play with recording settings. So I noticed when I've been doing recordings that things slow down a lot, actually, when I'm building or running tests. And I'm looking at seeing if there's a couple things I can do with maybe getting a device that can offload the recording, do it there rather than having my machine having to do it. And then, that frees up resources. This video, what I'm trying right now is I'm just reducing the output on my screen, in terms of the resolution. I've also turned down the camera resolution and gave them a little bit, less resolution, but hopefully still that it's readable. Things look okay and it's not too bad. So this is kind of an experimental video and just seeing, does this still look okay? Does this still look fine? And do things actually still run fairly well? Though I'm not going to be doing a lot with rocks in this video per se, but this is more just about how does it look? And then the next video, we're going to start getting back into doing rocks, and that will bring the system to its knees. Hopefully not. So the first thing I want to talk about here is some of the pre-work that I've been doing with source generators and just trying to get my head around how do you make them so that they're cached? How do you make them so that they perform better? And so let me actually bring up the web page, the article that has some really good information about source generators. Okay, so this is one about testing them. There's also an article by this person. I believe it's this one. Yeah, performance of, you can actually report the analyzer. I haven't done that yet. I will be looking into that as well. But that looks at when you're running Visual Studio, like how often does it run and for how long? And that's also going to be good to see. But this one is looking at when you create a source generator, you can actually give them these tracking names. And what's nice about this is that then you can run a test, you can create a compilation, you can create a generator, you can drive it, but you can give it some options to track those steps. And when you do this, when you run the generator, you'll be able to pull out the tracked output steps. And so you can start doing some things to say, hey, what happened with this one? What happened with this step? Because you can see up above what this person is doing is just pulling out a struct declaration and then grabbing the node, which again, I thought you're not supposed to do because then you're pinning or you're rooting, I believe the word is, any caching that's going on to this previous compilation, but never mind that, because I'm going to show you something about how you make the data model. So does that, then also goes from the compilation provider, gets the assembly name and tracks that with assembly name. Combines them, does the register source output where he grabs the node and the assembly name and then just creates a simple source. It's fairly straightforward, but this is to show you what happens when you make a change. Like if you just add a comment to the compilation with another syntax tree, does that change anything or not? And so what I did is I came over here and I just created a simple application to run this. Okay, and I have this interrogation driver. We'll see what that does in a moment. This is the original example. So a couple of different names, but essentially the same thing to get my head around what this is actually doing. Okay, so you can actually see here that I take the tree, which just has the struct test, but then I put the comment into it because I wanted to see what happens when you run this, in that this shouldn't arguably give you anything different, because what you really want to pull out is just the name of it and then the assembly name. Okay, so if I come back up here and let's run that, what you'll see hopefully, no, not a pink moon. Gotta switch my keyboard over to having the function keys right. And what we should see here is that. Okay, so you can see when we first run it, it's a new one, it's a new. Then we add a comment. Well, that comment is in a different syntax tree. It doesn't affect the original one. So we're cached, nothing has changed. And that's actually what you want. Okay. But then I changed the tree to having the same struct with a comment into it. And what happens is that all the outputs, we now have a new one. And the assembly name one hasn't changed. That's still unchanged, but this one has been modified. Okay, so then what I did is I said, well, let's change this a little bit. Let's come over here and go to this example where I basically do the same thing. And I will make a note to myself to make sure I have the link to that article. In fact, those 2 articles, I'll put them in the description because they're definitely very helpful. So I changed this so it does the same thing, except down here, like I said, I replaced the syntax tree, the original one with the struct. And also what I'm doing is, I believe this is a different generator. Yeah, this with source sample model. So this is the original generator from the article. This is one that I created that has a model, which grabs the value text and the text. So you can see here, when we find a struct declaration, what I do is then just grab the value text and the text out of it and return that as a record. And a record has a quality built into it. It does all the hash coding for you and everything. So records are very helpful, especially when something like this. Okay. So now what we're going to do is, instead of returning a struct declaration syntax, we're now going to be returning a sample model. And that's all we need down here as well. Again, very simple example. And we're going to change things around just like we did before, except the only thing that's different is the kind of source generator I'm using. So now if I come back up here and I say, let's run this, what we should see is a little bit of a different output. So the first time, yep, everything's new, got to run it. Second time, because all we did was add a comment in a separate syntax tree, nothing changes. But the third time, even though we've created a new syntax tree for the same struct that has a comment within it, we're still cached and nothing has changed, because remember, if I come back down here, all we're grabbing is from that node is the value text in the text. And so if we look at the way we're run with original example with model, yes. So again, right here, we're going to be replacing that syntax tree with the same struct, but just a comment within it. So what I need for my source generator hasn't changed. We get a cached, unchanged output. And that was actually very encouraging to see, because it's really what I was looking for. So what I'm going to be doing probably in the next video, assuming what I'm going to be doing next in this video doesn't go too far over, I want to create a test in Rocks that says, with the current generator, if I do something like this, what I would like to see is all the cached, unchanged things coming out. I bet what I'm going to see, though, is that it's modified and new, and that means it's running all the time, which is really bad. And that's exactly what I'm trying to get away from. So then when I start building my new one, and probably my first test will be a very simple interface with like a void foo method on it, just to say, can I generate the mock again? But then to have a test there that shows if I put a comment in that, if I change something else, it doesn't rerun that part of the generator. And it doesn't force me to then actually create all the mock code. Okay. And I've been still thinking about this, because the way the current Rocks generator works is that the initial part is quote unquote quick, in that it will give you the type declaration that's in the, how do I say this? That's in the Rock create or the Rock make or Rock repository, whatever. So in that case, what happens is you just get a syntax node back. And so arguably that's quicker, though I want to get away from that. Then later on, when you actually get down into the part here with the register source output, that's where it's now, I think there's also a step in between where it changes it into a type symbol. And then later on, it will actually change it to being a register source output and actually doing the mock information. So I might have to change that around. What I might do is say, well, I'm definitely going to now have to have a part that says, if you find that call, then pull the type out. We now have to create the data model right there. And so that's going to be a little bit more work up front. But what we're trying to make sure is that we don't actually do all the code generation output, and that we're not doing things with caching that could root things, if I've got my head around what that actually means. Okay. So hopefully that makes the overall performance of things faster. And again, typically what people are mocking, if they are using a mocking framework, is an interface that has a smallish set of members that doesn't have a lot of things in there. And not that I'm counting on that. If you give me an interface that has 500 members, well, I'd have to do that one way or the other, whether I use the old approach or what I'm trying to move towards. So not going to get away from that. And what I'm really trying to achieve, though, is that I'm not doing the source generation every single time a change comes in, even if that target type didn't change. Because the other thing that also with a mocking framework is you're usually not mocking things in the test assembly, things that are defined in the test assembly. These are things that are defined in another assembly. And yeah, you may be changing things there and then running tests. But typically you've got the interface, you've set it, you're writing tests, and over and over and over and over and over again, that does not change. That actually ends up being pretty static. So you can do one and done. And that's also arguably what is good about the source generator approach, is that unlike the mocking frameworks that do this all dynamically at runtime, they, every single time your tests run, have to redo that. Now, I don't know the ins and outs and internals of Visual Studio in terms of once everything's loaded in the test project, when everything's being rebuilt and stuff like that, are we gaining the advantage of, if you never change the interface or the target types definition, that you just one and done it and it's cached all the time? That would be sweet. That would actually be exactly what we want. So again, this was just playing around with how this worked, and I wanted to get my head around it. And this was encouraging because now we're going to start doing the next step. But Twin Cities Code Camp, which I'll also put a link in the description, is coming up for me when I'm recording this video next Saturday on April 15th. So by the time you see this video, that would have already happened. There is a program that I've written that I use when we do prize drawings at the end. We get a list that we curate and put together, and I have to curate it because people will sometimes register more than once. We see that. And people will also sometimes change their name because they have trolled me when I get the name up there. So we've learned nothing's ever been like somebody's done something negative, like put something racist or anything like that. But I think one time we had somebody, and I know who the person is, I remember, put something up where their name was like, "Oh, Jason, please give me a prize at AOL.com or something like that. That actually made me laugh. But in any event, we get a list of all the people that have registered. And then this is just a random drawing. And I actually make it very random. I don't use the random type from .NET. I use the cryptographic random number generator to pick. And we've had people come up and a couple times accuse us, not in a very defensive or argumentative way, that we're cheating and giving preference to certain people. But yeah, we've had a couple of people say, "Well, I want to see the code." And of course, the code's up there. It's up on GitHub, and well, that's not the code you're running there. You should build it and do all that. It's like, I could do anything in the world, and you still wouldn't believe me. Yeah, sometimes it's fun dealing with people. So, yeah. Anyway. So in any event, the code's all out on GitHub. It's actually a WinForms application. They still haven't changed it because it works. It's a simple app. It works. Why change it over to something like Blazor? Or as interesting as that would be, there's no point. It works. Yeah. and we just randomly pick something that their name comes up on the top, real big font, because we want to make sure that we see their name and they see it. And then we just move that off the list, and then we pick another person, and we keep going. We never get through the whole thing, but I just wanted to see what would happen if I upgrade this to .NET 7. Okay, so give me a moment. I'm going to load it. Part of the reason I'm also going to load is because we use a text file just to grab all the names. I want to make sure that that's not going to show any previous emails from people, and I just don't want that on the screen. So give me a second until I got that loaded. Okay, I just briefly wanted to show this. This is how old this code base is. I actually thought we had updated this to, no, we wouldn't have, because yeah, the last time we did Twin Cities Code Camp was before COVID-19, and that was in 2019. So 2020, let's see, 2022 is when .NET 7 came out. 2021, .NET 6, 2020 is .NET 5. So 2019, there was no new united .NET. Yeah, there's .NET Core, and I think you could port your app, your WinForms app, to .NET Core. But yeah, I haven't touched this in a long time, so I'm definitely going to upgrade to 4.8, but then we're going to upgrade to 7, and then this could end up being another video, because I did something like this with another WinForms app I had called Quixo. It was a game, and updating it there. That was actually more work than I anticipated, so I always do this to myself. All right, let's see how far this goes. Okay, I don't know what happened. It works. But what's funny is that, like, if I run it, this is the old logo. This is one that I made, and I actually was kind of proud of it, because if you look behind it, it's got that faded map with Minneapolis and St. Paul and our logo, name there. And I was like, I was so happy with this. It actually worked. But I know I changed this so that it has our newer image up there. This wasn't like blindingly the bright light look. We made it all dark, and we changed the font. I know I did this. Of course, I had a list here, just names here, but this is not what's up in GitHub. So if I go up to GitHub, let's see, github.com. Wait a minute, where did I pull this from? I just changed this from TCC winners. Where did I actually just pull this from? Hold on. I might have said github.com, TCC winner. Okay, that's on my site. But we do have a Twin Cities Code Camp site. I believe there's one, because we have our site up there hosted, because we do static hosting. And this is just now really, this is the TC Code Camp site. Well, no, this is our old site, which this is, like, I don't even know why we have this here, because this is no longer correct. Twin Cities was Sessionized Converter. We have the website, so there should be a Twin Cities Code Camp. You're like, don't you know this, Jason? I just forgot. We have the static, we have the website, but we do not have the actual app there. I am wondering if the right thing to do would be to I don't want to completely make it and move it into Blazor and everything like that, but to make it so that this repository now lives in here. And so we'd have a Twin Cities Code Camp .winners. And so, because if you look, there's only one form here. It's really simple, and I could look at all the properties for this and change it over and get it so that the fonts and everything are correct. And yeah, I'm actually thinking that's the right thing to do here, because if I say view the code, like, that's it. This is all the code that you load attendees. This is just from a list, and then you just add them to the attendees list items. And then on the pick, there's this secure random class that I'm using, which actually I could probably move up to being an instance of here. but this is from Spackle. And then you just say, pick me the next value. And again, this is cryptographically secure. We then get the next item out, and then we show that here, and then we remove it from the current list. So, and we only do that if this would be simple. So, okay, what I'm going to do off camera is create a new repository in our Twin Cities Code Camp GitHub site. I'm going to, I want to get at least some of it there, but then once I have just like the app here in the new one, then we'll basically transfer over what I've done over in the old one to the new one and make that work. And we should have the new Winners app up. Okay. So that will be done in the next episode. Thank you all for watching. Leave comments and questions below. See you in the next episode.